Welcome to another episode of the Unblock Your BS podcast. Today we are getting into a coaching conversation. These are some of my favorite episodes to do because it is bringing real people, real listeners, just like you, on with real problems that we actually can start to apply kind of these concepts and tools I talk about in solo episodes. And so today, a listener, Chuck, wrote in the following, and that's what we're going to dive into today. So Chuck is 28 and he's going through a divorce. And he says, what set it off was my defensiveness and anger. I beat myself up for the longest time and still sometimes do for the way that I handled myself through our brief marriage. She has never once in our relationship ever apologized sincerely for anything. I have taken on all the blame for everything that has happened, even though I know it's not all my fault. How do I get out of this cycle of beating myself up? I continue to cry constantly because I am now angry for different reasons. I feel betrayed, quit on, never given a real chance to change my behavior. I have to co parent with her, and I don't know how I'm supposed to do it without hating her and eventually having my son see it. I have absolutely no confidence in myself right now. My financial situation is disastrous. I cannot afford to live even the most basic of lives. I am about to be homeless. This situation has prevented me from finding friends or people to be around because I'm so distraught all the time. Oh, oh. So this is a real conversation with Chuck today, who is also a dad. He's about to be a single dad, and he has been listening to the podcast. Obviously, he applied on our podcast application page, and he's also been following me on TikTok and also sharing his journey through navigating all of this on TikTok as well. So, we're going to talk about childhood wounds fueling anger and shame, and why shame is like the default story and voice in men's heads specifically. We're talking about why co-parenting after divorce can feel like an emotional landmine, what to do when you feel like a broken little boy in a grown man's body, and how to rebuild your identity as a grounded, emotionally intelligent leader. This one is raw, honest, and deeply healing. And he was super nervous to come on, and he did a great job and felt great leaving off. And so if you're a man on the edge of change or you love one who is, you'll want to listen all the way through. So just as a heads up, this is the final, I believe, 24 hours at the time of this release for applying for the Healthy Mentality Program. We kick off the next round this Sunday, May 18th. So if you want to learn more about that program, if you want to be the kind of man who feels confident, calm, grounded, and deeply respected in your relationships, you need to apply. Applying allows us to jump on a call and deep dive if this is the right next step for you or not. But you do have to apply no later than, I believe, 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time Zone, May 15th. So you can go to unblockyourbs.com/healthymen to learn more about that program and apply. All right, let's get into today's coaching episode with listener Chuck. All right, Chuck, welcome to the podcast. Well, I read kind of what you had put in your application, but why don't you kind of tell me where you're at right now? Like what today is on your mind? We'll start there.
Well, honestly, I'm getting to the point where I'm trying to get to like that no contact stage where
Okay.
I can just heal and be free. Um, but she keeps cropping back up and I keep reaching back out and I'd like to move on from that.
Yeah. So how long were you guys married?
We were only married for about 2.5 years, but our relationship was 4.
Okay. And you have, how old's your child?
He's 2.5.
Okay. Yeah. Hard to go no contact when you're co-parenting.
Yeah,
So I even think that
absolutely.
so what does co-parent or what does no contact mean to you? Because obviously you have to have conversations with
Yeah.
your child.
I'd like to not feel that urge to reach out about something that's not about our kid.
And when's the last time you reached out when it wasn't about the kid?
Today.
Okay. And what was
Yeah.
that for?
Um, I reached out to apologize for something that I realized that I did in our relationship that I just felt like I needed to apologize
Was
for.
she receptive?
No, she hasn't responded to
Okay.
most, if any, of my texts for
Right.
two
Right.
weeks.
So you're going through the process of processing through maybe taking responsibility for your parts of kind of where you starting to create awareness around maybe areas you could have done better. Is that fair?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Um, who initiated the divorce?
Uh, I guess technically me, I brought it up first, but she's the one who went through with it.
Okay. And why did you bring up the divorce?
Um, at the time, I really felt like we couldn't fix it. It was like I don't know, all the emotions I was having were so big that I couldn't handle it anymore. But the second I lost her, I realized that was such a mistake. So
Okay, walk me through that. So, kind of get specific as to what emotions were overwhelming you.
yeah, let me think here. Basically, I had my defensiveness was the big problem, and I didn't know why I was defensive. I didn't know why I was doing really anything. I just knew that the feelings I was having were so big, like my anger, my frustration, the
Mhm.
way I was snapping at her, the way I was saying things to her under my breath. Like it wasn't the kind of it was it was the kind that felt uncontrollable. Like I was actively saying things to hurt her when I knew, like logically, I knew I shouldn't be doing that, but I couldn't control it.
Yeah. Yeah. And where do you think that comes from?
Truthfully,
Where
I think it stems from some childhood stuff I need to deal with and have been working on dealing with behind the scenes. So,
where did you learn that anger was the default emotion that was safe?
oh yeah, I don't I don't know actually. Yeah, I'm not sure.
All right, some homework, some self-reflection, but it's typically modeled for us in some way, shape, or form that this is a good outlet or this is how you handle conflict or when you feel and perceive an attack. Anger is the way to go. So anger is a secondary emotion, meaning it's usually a protective emotion. It is protecting usually fear or sadness. So in the moments of when you reacted out of fear and even in your brain, you're like, this might be a little aggressive. What tender spot do you think it was trying to protect?
Honestly, I think it was trying to protect the little kid who never felt good enough for his dad.
Yeah. So rejection or abandonment. Is
Yeah,
that fair? Yeah.
yeah.
And anger, correct me if I'm wrong, is pretty effective at stopping an attack, is it not?
Oh God, it was the best.
So good.
It
It's
was
so
instant.
effective, right? And
Yeah,
that's the problem, right? And
yeah,
that's why we get into cycles because it does work for what it's trying to do, which is protect that part of you. But when it comes to people that we actually want to have connection with, it creates massive destruction. And so, but then we get in a cycle because it's an effective tool to use to stop the pain and the hurt that we are perceiving. Um, so here's where it gets a little bit tricky, but also where the hope is for you is that it's actually something that can be worked through somatic type therapy responses. One being somatic breath work, which is my tool of choice. Because for me, on the opposite end, I never let myself feel anger prior to doing breath work because it felt scary because I was always on the receiving end of it. So it was very traumatic for me to be on the receiving end of anger. Therefore, I labeled it as an unsafe emotion. Whereas you probably label it as an unsafe emotion, but an effective emotion to stop. And so that's when you say things like, I couldn't get it to stop, it's because A, you didn't have the tools to be able to understand what your body needed in that moment to discharge the energy. It would just build up. And it actually was doing the job that you deployed it to do.
that
It
makes
became
sense.
destructive, right? So kind of talk to me about, I know you've been doing some internal work and some self-reflection work. So we love a self-working, keep it up. But talk to me about how did you wish you would have handled the situations where you got explosive with the anger?
Yeah, I in a perfect world, I would have been able to just acknowledge right off the bat that I was angry
Okay,
instead
so
of,
model for me
yeah,
right now what that sounds like because I think a lot of people get in those moments where they're heated up, right?
yeah.
But they don't know in that moment what do I do because I just want to explode and lash out.
Um, I think it would be for me just immediately, if my wife was still in front of me, I would be immediately taking myself away from her
Mhm,
because I was obviously lashing out at her.
mhm,
So if I'm not by her, I can't hurt her, whether
mhm.
that's with my words, with my actions, doesn't matter. I can't hurt her if she's not by me. So I would just need to get away,
Yeah.
get
And
alone,
that's
basically.
what advocating for your needs looks like in a way that doesn't destroy connection. It may create a disconnect, but it's not nearly as destructive as anger. So even something like Oh, I can tell I'm getting really worked up right now. I need a moment. I need to take a break. I need to go for a walk. I need to, and we deploy these other healthy coping skills to be able to get the energy of the anger to come down so that logic can come onto play. So I don't know if you've seen the TikTok videos where I've talked about the different parts of our brain, but our amygdala, which is kind of a part of our limbic system and responsible for emotions, lives in the back of our head. And our prefrontal cortex, our frontal lobe, is responsible for logical, rational thought. Well, guess what? When the amygdala starts popping off, it starts to flood the brain and the prefrontal cortex starts to shut off. So emotions rise, logic goes away. That's why in those moments, right now, you can go, oh, well, yeah, I should have done X, Y, and Z. Logically, that makes sense. In those moments, it's hard to access logic. That's why we have to learn these self awareness tools and these nervous system regulation tools so that we have a coping skill or a tool that we can deploy in those moments when our emotions start to take over. Because when our emotions start to take over, that's just energy. It's hormones being dumped into your body. That's what your amygdala does, is it pours hormones in. So with anger, it's probably pumping a lot of cortisol, right? A lot of fight response. And so it wants to attack and wants to make whatever it's perceiving as hurt to shut it down so that you stop feeling that way. And then your nervous system will come down, the emotions come down, and the logic comes back on. However, when we're in a pressure cooker of a relationship that has miscommunication, poor communication, unhealthy coping skills, trauma involved, we don't get oftentimes enough traction in the healing process that we just keep going back through the loop. Is that kind of what was happening with you guys as you were both
Absolutely.
drowning?
Yep. And then it
Yep.
snowballed and snowballed and snowballed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at some point, somebody has to call a timeout and be like, hey, this isn't working. Like, we're both drowning here and we're dragging each other down. Like, we need to have a line in the sand. We don't have the tools to get on the other side of this. We need to go learn those tools. Or in your guys' case, it was abandoned ship. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes
Yeah.
perfect sense.
So going back to present day and the reaching out. So it's a beautiful journey to self reflect. I think everybody, no matter whether somebody had been the initiator on the divorce or the reason for the divorce, there's always self reflection to have, because even in instances where, say, somebody else cheated and that was the reason why there's a breakup happening, who was the person who chose somebody who lacks integrity of commitment and loyalty and all of that? You were, right? And so there's always something to look back and go, what was my contribution in a relationship that ended in this result, so that I can make sure that the version of me that chose this partner doesn't continue to choose partners. Where a lot of people get stuck is that they play the victim of like, no, 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 it's all them. They did X, Y, and Z. They did this to me. I was the innocent victim. That was me coming out of my marriage. And in a lot of ways, I had to play that role. Wasn't realizing, wasn't fully present that's what I was doing. But it's like I almost needed that to make him the reason and problem for everything in order for me to get out of a very unhealthy situation. However, in hindsight, in reflecting back, I certainly played my part in it, mainly by enabling. So I don't know if that was maybe her part too, but by not communicating my needs, by not having healthy boundaries of, you will not talk to me that way. You will not raise your voice at me. If you are angry, you need to go get help, those kinds of things, right?
Mhm.
Because when we have codependency, meaning we're dependent on each other for emotional regulation or for feeling better or feeling sad or whatever, like it's a volatile kind of, if you're not okay, I'm not okay, then we're both drowning and nobody's helping us, right? So when you reached out this morning, be honest with yourself, what was the hope of the reaction or response you would get out of her?
I guess I hoped deep down that I would get some kind of a response.
Yeah. So when we do things out of the hope that somebody will react or respond, it is a form of manipulation, not bad intention manipulation, but it is, right? You're doing something with the hope that you get a result. Even if you were to, I'm just kind of making a more light scenario, even if you were to clean the house and you're hoping she comes home and then has extra time to maybe get physical with you in the bedroom, that's still a form of manipulation. So just know that manipulation is not necessarily a bad label. It's neither good nor bad. But what we're looking at is your outgoing action of sending her a message and owning your part is less of a healing journey because it's dependent on her getting a reaction. So then you tell me how you felt when she didn't respond. What was kind of the cycle and the narrative and story you went through in your head?
Yeah. I mean, the thing I've been telling myself lately is, it's fine if she doesn't respond because I feel better about saying it.
Walk me through that.
Like, like today I apologized, right? So it felt, I don't know, I felt like a weight come off my shoulders when I apologized for the things that I recognized that I did 6 to 8 months ago that I had no clue that I did. Um,
And what specifically had you feeling better?
just the fact, I guess, that even if she didn't respond, I knew that she now knows that I was remorseful for it.
Okay.
Um, yeah, that's pretty much it. I just really wanted her to know. I failed so miserably in our marriage, taking accountability for things. Excuse me. That I desperately want her to know that I'm sorry.
That's beautiful. And she should know. And if she's not responding, she's telling you behaviorally if she's not ready to hear it and she's not ready to accept it. And it may be very triggering for her to constantly be getting those messages because it may be aggravating her.
Okay, that's
Right.
fair.
And you can check with her, right? I mean, for sure validate that. I don't want to speak for her because she's not here. But if she, I mean, I think I can speak for a lot of women who have been treated poorly in a relationship and they probably spent years. I mean, you guys weren't together super long. But I know I spent most of a decade begging in every way I knew how for things to change until I checked out. And then if there was to be any remorse, which my ex has never communicated remorse to me directly, it's almost like too late. Like, where were you a year ago, 3 years ago when I was crying and this is what I needed and what I asked for? And a lot of times I feel like men, and again, I'm generalizing, men kind of miss those cues and those signals
Yeah,
because on the outside and transactionally in a relationship, everything is fine. I'm providing, I'm protecting, I'm doing these things, but emotionally, the relationship is not connected. But you guys don't, what you will see first is that she pulls away physically, like the intimacy in the relationship in the bedroom starts to tank. And that's when she's feeling really disconnected emotionally. Now, again, it's these are just patterns, and typically why women are more likely to file divorce is because the disconnect between the emotions of the relationship. And so I anytime for you specifically, I might give this a test, is anytime you're having the urge to send her a message, just journal it out. Now, I'm not
okay.
talking type it on your phone. I'm not typing it in a computer, like write it out. There's something that happens with our brain when we are physically writing. So that, because ultimately, if I'm understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you want to be seen and heard from your
Y-
experience too, because that was what was missing when you went angry, was a
Yeah,
lack of connection and feeling understood or valued, right?
yeah.
So that seeking for it now isn't going to come from her, it's coming from you. Because in what ways, let me ask you this, when you would get so angry, what did that little boy need in those moments?
I felt like I just needed someone to ask me if I needed help.
Yeah. How are you helping yourself in those moments when that little boy was freaking out, ringing all the alarm bells that he knew to ring? Where were you for him?
Honestly, I don't know. I was hiding somewhere.
Right. And so it's less, and this is where these childhood inner child stuff comes up, and the inner child work I do with one-on-one clients, like the childhood issues that come up. And I've seen some of your videos, so I know that you have, I mean, it sounds like you had a dad that was present, but maybe not emotionally, or wasn't the dad that you needed. And we'll kind of get into that here in a second. But a lot of times it's our inner child, that immature part of our brain, that underdeveloped emotional part of our brain that is asking for attention, and it uses emotions to do that. So in your case, the anger bell works really, really well. And that little boy is saying, like, I need help. I'm feeling overwhelmed. Maybe he just needed a hug, or maybe he needed a break, or maybe he was hungry, or maybe he was scared. Right. And so instead of expecting our partner to be the source of that validation, that support, if we're not giving it to ourselves first, then we sure as shit can't expect a partner to do it for us. That puts her in the mommy role. Nobody wants to be the
Right, that
parent,
makes
right?
sense.
Yeah. And so have you done some inner child work, or do you now know how to face that inner child to give him the support as opposed to seeking external things, success, achievement, relationships, all of that?
I'm still working on I'm at the very beginning, really.
Cool. Let's get you some tools. All right.
Cool.
All right. So in the moments that you start to feel any emotion coming up, I'm going to stick with the negative ones because those people have no problem managing happy emotions. So let's stick with the negative ones. When is there something in your body you start to notice when you're starting to get worked up, like where you notice it first?
I just noticed this like tightness in my gut or like
Top of
right
your
at
stomach?
my stomach. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm gonna get real woo on you here, but I kind of go by the chakra system. So the top of your stomach is actually your relationship with yourself. If it's in your chest, it's your relationship with others. If it's in your throat, it is your ability to speak your truth. So I kind of look at the chakra system of where does the energy, the sensation manifest in the body, and what is that indicating? So when you start to feel that anger and that tension or that sensation come up, it's in the upper stomach, which is your relationship with yourself. So what we're looking at in healing is the relationship with yourself, not the relationship with others. Weird, right? But that's what we're talking about with that inner child work, is that your ability to be a solid, grounded man who can make decisions that he is proud of and show up as the man he desires to be is the healing work. When we talk about like do the work in for men specifically, that's the goal. When you can be so grounded in your call it your masculinity, just even your confidence, who you are, you become unfuckable with, meaning that nobody, no partner, no stranger on the internet, nobody can tell you any differently than you don't already know about yourself, good and bad, and you accept and you love yourself. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being I hate myself, 10 being I love myself and I'm unbelievably confident in myself, where do you fall?
Right now, I would say somewhere about a 6.
Good, good, better
Yep.
half, better than half, right? You're betting 6.
Yeah.
um cool. So what's the gap between 6 and a 10 for you?
Ooh, I don't know. That's a good question.
All right.
I'm not sure.
All right, think about it for a second. Take your time. And you can just come up with one thing that comes up for you, or if there's a list, that's fine too. But when you think about a man who is a solid 10 in himself and you, what is the difference?
Um, I would say just that like that ability to just own everything you do and just be okay with it, whether it's good or bad. Just be like, I'm good with it. I'll learn from it. It is what it is.
Yeah. And so you don't do that currently.
No, I'm
And
trying to, but
yeah,
not quite.
what stops you or what comes up for you?
Um, a lot of just like underlying emotions that I never knew I had
Mm-hmm.
that I got to work through. A lot of right now, it's been a lot of memories that come back and like thinking about things I had done in the past and all the feelings that come with those things.
What would be the primary feeling?
Um,
Does it start with an S?
yeah, I think I think yeah, it's a lot of me feeling scared and
Or
um,
shame?
shame. Yeah, shame, definitely shame. Yes,
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
one.
That's a big one for men. Like a
Yeah,
big, big, big one. Why do you think that is? Why is shame such a default emotion when we reflect back on our choices and we have regrets, we have embarrassment, we have shame?
honestly, yeah, I don't know. It's just it's always there. I really don't know
Whose
why.
voice is it that you hear? Because it's not yours.
Um, honestly, when feel shame, I don't hear anything. I just shut down. So I don't know.
Yeah. Because you got to think about let me ask you this, is how's your internal self-talk?
Sounds like a little kid. It's like my little my little 6-year-old self talking to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So is it uplifting and supportive and exciting? Is it kind of beating you down? Is it telling you, you could do better, that you're not good enough? How dare you? See, you're an idiot, you're a moron, you're a fuck up.
Yeah, it's definitely the more negative things
Yeah.
to hear.
That's not you. We are born with two fears when we come into this world. The fear of loud noises and the fear of falling. Every other fear, worry, concern is conditioned within us. So out of mom or dad, who had the more harsh expectations or critical comments towards you?
I'd say my dad.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
why dad?
Well, honestly, like logically looking at it, he wasn't any of those things. It's just at the time I only saw him 4 days a month my entire life.
Hmm.
And every time I was over at his place, I just never felt good enough because, you know, at my mom's house, there were no rules. My dad was just trying to be a good dad. He was just trying to, instill some discipline in me. But that felt to me like I couldn't do anything right.
Yeah. Is there a specific memory you have from childhood where you remember feeling that way or thinking that? Like you're doing your best and he just isn't accepting of it?
No, there isn't one specific moment. It's just that every time that I do think back, even the times where we're smiling and happy, like I just have this, I don't know, I just like have a out of body experience where I'm looking at him, feeling like I don't know what I have to do to be good enough for you.
Hmm. I'm gonna have you close your eyes right now. And I want you to think of that, just even that image in your head of you looking at him and asking that question of like, how can I be good enough for you? Or what was the specific language that you're asking?
Um, yeah, just what do I have to do to be good enough for you? That's really it.
All right, so keep your eyes closed. Take a deep breath in through the nose. Open mouth, exhale. Can you picture yourself in a scenario where he's standing there or sitting there and you're asking yourself that question? You may not be saying it out loud.
Yeah, I don't even know what it is, like what we were doing, but he's sitting on the couch and I must be like 7 or 8,
Yeah.
and he's just looking at me like I don't know. There's that look you give people where you're just not, they're not meeting some sort of expectation you have for him, and that's just all I see all the time.
Yeah. And that kind of image on his face still haunts you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you stay present with that memory, is there anything else that comes to mind as to what that was about?
Um, Truthfully, my gut's telling me that it's just because I never saw him, and it that was the main feeling, like why I felt that way is just I never saw him. Like he didn't want to fight for me. He didn't
Mm,
want to go fight for custody.
yeah. And how old were you when they divorced?
I was 3.
Okay. Because I don't imagine you felt that way at 3, at least as far as you can remember. Is that fair?
No, the I don't remember exactly what I was feeling at 3, but my very first memory of my dad is him storming out of the house.
Mm,
So that's the very first thing I remember.
okay. And you were what, around 3 or 4? Three?
Probably closer to like 3,
Yeah.
probably like that 2.5 to 3.5 range.
Yeah. That's pretty intense, especially that young. Okay. So dad is storming out of the house. What else can you remember about that, if anything?
Not much. I just remember him storming out of the house, the door slamming, and then that's where the memory ends.
Okay. And then was the relationship done after that?
Yeah.
So it was like that was the day that everything changed.
Yeah, very well could have been.
And as far as you can remember, how often did you see him in those few days or weeks following him storming out?
I don't remember. I don't remember at all.
Okay.
I have no idea.
Okay. So then by the time 4 years later, you're 7 years old, kind of sitting at his house, and he's got a look on his face. Was that a look you had seen before?
Yeah, and it's a look I still see to this day.
Yeah. Now I'm going to make some inferences just for time's sake, but I'm wondering if the look that he had in those moments when he's storming out of the house where he left mom and he left you was the moment that your brain equated that look as he's leaving. He's
Yeah,
gone.
very well could have been.
And I wonder if there is something in your nervous system that picks up on a specific facial feature that triggers that in you with anyone, including your soon to be ex.
Yeah, honestly, I can like looking at my situation with her. Yeah, there's she had a certain face she made.
Yeah.
when we were talking, and yeah.
Yeah. Welcome to a trauma response, buddy. Yeah.
Shit.
Found it. We've unblocked your BS. No, we've at least found the BS. Okay. And when I say BS, it's, it's not the bullshit. It's the belief story, right? It's the belief that was created in those moments as a 3-year-old, not understanding the world and not understanding this is a mommy daddy thing, that it's not a me thing. We are very self-centered creatures by design when we're under the age of, kind of 10 to 12, because that prefrontal cortex, the logical part of our brain, has not developed. We're very reactionary. We're very responsive. We're just sponges of our environment. And so we can't comprehend that mom and dad are dysfunctional and they shouldn't be together and they're toxic. And this is actually what's best for the family. We just see dad being upset, leaving, and then dad doesn't come back. And now everybody's upset and our nervous system doesn't know what's going on. And now I'm only seeing my dad, a few times a month. And, my whole ecosystem of stability and support is out the window. And I don't know why. So it must be me. I must have done something, right? Because we don't get that it has nothing to do with us. Or maybe something is said and it's, like, if I wasn't so stressed out with the kids, then I'd be here for you, or whatever, who knows. And so then our brain starts to go into survival mode. And the best way the brain knows how to survive is by finding evidence to match your internal beliefs. And so if your internal beliefs thinks that you're the problem and there's something wrong with you and that's why their marriage broke or that's why dad left, it will then spend the next 20, 30 years finding evidence to match that because we don't challenge it. And your brain likes to keep you in the known. It knows how to operate in the known, even if the known sucks, even if the known hurts. Your brain knows how to deploy the resources to keep you surviving. Your brain is just created to survive. So when we move into more healing and self-awareness, we can actually start to hack the brain to not always default to survival. And so in those moments when your emotions are starting to spike, you already created the awareness of, now we know that certain facial expressions and maybe even a tone of voice, for me, it's a tone, can trigger you to go back to that scared little 3-year-old or that sad little 7-year-old, right? And it's in those moments that you have to logically in your head real quick go, what I'm feeling is not true for the moment. I need to go pause and address the emotions because that little boy is starting to act up. Okay. And he's going to go back to that sad little 7-year-old, that scared little 3-year-old, but now he's a big, strong man and he's got a loud voice and he's going to be destructive. So we need to wrangle him in for a second and go actually address what's coming up for us before we bring anybody else into it. Now, if you have a safe partner, you guys can co-regulate together. This is a beautiful thing for men to learn to do for women because women, our emotions change every week and every minute. But when you have a safe partner, and it doesn't sound like your ex-wife was that, where you start to say, I'm ramping up, then if she's in a good level space and not being triggered in the moment, she can say, okay, what is it you need? Do you need to go for a walk? Let's go for a walk. Let's go outside. We won't talk about it. We'll put a pause on it. Or come give me a hug. Let's take some breaths together and let's pause the conversation and handle the emotions first. That would be creating safety for someone. Okay. It's a beautiful quality to have in a partner. Most people are shit at it. They don't know how to do it. So for you, the power of the pause is what I call it, is going to be your superpower. Anytime your nervous system starts to get ramped up, whether you're feeling lonely, whether you're feeling remorseful, shame, anger, is pausing and going, whoop, hold on. I need to address the emotion first. What is this emotion trying to tell me? And that's when you can go, I'm sad, I'm scared, I'm afraid, I'm feeling regret, I'm feeling abandoned, I'm feeling whatever that is, and start to explore that. I will gift you the nervous system reset toolkit. So just remind me after this call to send that to you because there are audio tracks in there to help you in that pause. So when you're in a pause, you can go, okay, I'm going to go listen to the fight response. And there's a whole 5 to 7 minute audio in there to talk you down out of the emotion. It's not going to solve your emotions. You're not going to be feeling all zen after that. That's what breath work is for, but it will get the edge to come off for you to have your logic start to kick on. Because when logic kicks on, then we can actually problem solve for whatever the fucking problem is. We don't need to destroy each other over it. Kind of talk to me about one of the most common arguments or fights that you and your ex would have.
It would be over chores, basically.
Household chores.
Yep.
Okay. And what was her complaint and what was your complaint?
Her complaint was I didn't do enough.
Okay.
My complaint was I'm a grown man. I survived before you. I can survive during you, and I
Ooh,
can
yeah,
survive
that'll
after
do it.
you.
That'll
But
do it.
the
She's
problem is
like, bet.
you don't let me do the things my way.
Okay.
That was my thing.
Okay. So there's something in coaching called surface context and deeper structure. Surface context is what they say, deeper structure is what they mean. So you guys are both getting petty with each other, you a little bit more than her. But saying she's like, I need help around the house is essentially what she was asking for, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And you were saying what was underneath the, well, I've done it before and I'll do it my way kind of a thing.
Well, I didn't start with those. The reason those came up was because I kept taking on more and more. And eventually it became like I was doing 50-50 or I was doing 60-40 and it still wasn't
So
enough.
yours was, I need help.
Yeah, like I just need
Yeah,
I'm not
both
even
of you
need help,
needed
just
help.
like just acknowledge that I'm doing more. And don't tell me next week that I'm not doing enough still.
Right. Well, but again, it's that's all symptoms of a deeper
Sure.
issue. The underlying issue is that you were both struggling and
Yeah,
reaching out for help and it wasn't being met. And so then it became a competition of who's doing more and who's not doing more.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Fair? That's
Yeah.
never going to win, right? Because
Right.
the underlying thing is that we're struggling and we are misaligned in what we're trying to create here. Because you guys have, and this happens with young kids, if people don't stop to pause to focus in on, we have a family now, we have young children or a young child, things are different and we need to like rework our trajectory as a family because this isn't going to work, then that snowballs. It is so common. I think every relationship goes through this when you get young kids, is that we're drowning, and what worked for us, even the first couple months of the baby's life, but you have a woman whose hormones are all over the place and she can't be what she used to be. Plus she has a human on her all the time, like the factors change. So the relationship, the expectations, and the future that we're working towards also needs to change, because then there's also a lot of pressure on the provider to also have another mouth to feed and a lot more responsibility. And then also like the emotional bonding with the child is a little bit delayed compared to the mom, and there can be jealousy, and like it's a whole shit stew when we throw kids into the mix. And until we can actually pause and have this vulnerable conversation of like, I miss you, like I know you're burned with, like, I don't want to say burned with the kid, but like I know that the kid is, having issues with jaundice or up all night, or you haven't slept much this week, or the dishes are piling up, or I'm at work a lot and I know I'm taking on overtime because we've got this big house to pay, and like it's all of a sudden this dream that we had pre-kids now becomes the curse that tears you apart. This fantasy that this is going to be our life and we're going to have this house in the right school district and we're going to have these cars and we're going to have this financial stability, and then we throw in a kid into the mix and all the hormones that are involved with that and the stress and the financial responsibility and all of things adding up, that all of a sudden this vision that we had and this goal and this dream becomes a curse, where we actually lose the thing that we're working for, which is a connected family. So
Yeah.
I know in hindsight that doesn't help much, but I think that's, I know for me, when, I mean, even I had a miscarriage. That was our first pregnancy. I had a miscarriage at 4 months pregnant. So I was pretty pregnant by then. And then he deployed very shortly after that for 8 months. And we were just disconnected. We never, and we both kind of acknowledged that that was the first year of our relationship, that we never really connected back again after that. That was all about kids, that we didn't go back to repair our grief and grieve together. I focused mainly on having kids and he was along for the ride. And then we had kids and then he started acting up and had PTSD triggered and all this stuff. And we just never got back to focusing in on what was truly important, was that the family is together and cohesive. We got caught up in life and we got caught up in blaming each other and we got caught up in hormones and we got caught up in stress and we got caught up in job transitions, and it definitely happens. And so all of that to say, when we go back to the power of the pause, is taking that time to look at what is actually the problem that needs to be solved versus what is my emotional response to the situation. And until you can get the emotions out of the way, you probably won't be able to have much clarity on what the actual request was. So, reflecting back now, what was her actual request in all of that?
I think she just needed help and
Yeah.
just needed me to really, like, really help
Yeah. And what
without
does
having
that
to,
mean specifically? Like really, really help. Get more
like,
clear.
not like she wanted me to take the burden off of her, but take it off completely.
Yeah.
No, not have her come tell me like, "Hey, can you do this?" Just do it. I already
Yeah.
have it done type thing.
Yeah. And if she had asked you in that kind of way, Would you have heard it any differently, or do you think at that time you still would have been reactive and defensive?
I think I would have been reactive and defensive, but I do think I would have heard it. I
Yeah.
think I could have taken it to heart, 10, 20, 30 minutes later and made a difference.
But would it have also felt like too much for you because you were already taking on so much? Or do you think you could have stepped up and taken everything off of her plate for a season?
I think I could have stepped up,
Yeah.
because by her coming to me like that, it would have it would have helped me feel a little bit of relief from how I normally had to communicate with her, which is like
Mm,
begging to tell me what you need and just, so it would have been a win-win for both of us.
yeah, you wouldn't have had to like guess at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know, and that's tough. And I think a lot of people, especially if you've been in a partnership for quite a while, we have this expectation that our partner should just know us and anticipate our needs. Um, Here's the thing, and my I remember with my ex, when we were first dating, probably that first year, I was like, he knows me better than myself. No, he's just really good at guessing. And but I got tugged into the illusion that he just knew me and would know what I want. And anytime that you have this expectation that somebody knows what you want, but you haven't communicated, you are ripe for resentment. You're building so much resentment because you have this expectation that they're going to know what you want or they're just going to understand what you mean. But it's almost like speaking different languages. So she can say, I need help. And you hear, I need to do the dishes differently. When in her head, she's like, I need to take a fucking week off. I need like no kids, no nothing. I've lost myself. I need to connect back with me. You guys are speaking different languages, even though you're saying the same word. And so that's where coming from a place of curiosity and asking questions before we get emotionally down a rabbit hole is going to help so much with being able to effectively problem solve. So even if she says like, I need your help, pausing and going, because I know, like I get it when you get in those cycles, but it's like, hold on, what does help look like for you? You have a picture in your head, right? Can you tell me what that is specifically? And she tells you to the best of her ability. You keep asking questions until you feel like you're clear. You can even say, here's what I'm hearing you say. And then once that happens, you get to digest it and go, what is it that I am capable of in this moment versus what is me taking on too much just because I'm trying to please her because I may not have the bandwidth to take all of that on. Right. So this is where we don't self abandon just to try and save our partner, even though they're asking for help. Say, okay, here's what I've got going on. Right. And here's where I'm not sure I can take this on. So we need to reprioritize our values together so that we both aren't drowning. So it could be that, like, I have to work. I can't take the baby overnight. Um, on the weekends, I can help out and give you a 2-hour break. But how are we, or we need to have my mom come in for a weekend and you and I will just go away for a weekend or whatever that is. We come together to problem solve instead of what I think most couples get in this trap of is, well, you're struggling. So I guess I'm going to take on everything else, but there's not a conversation around it. And there's not a mutual agreement of what the costs are and the consequences are into shifting roles or responsibilities or burdens or pressures of that one partner's struggling with. And how are we getting out of this? Who is getting support and help? If it's a mental health struggle and I'm depressed or I'm just taking on too much, great. How are we going to get you support that isn't just waiting for time and crossing our fingers that this is going to get better, that we're actually working towards things and checking in with each other to create connection? Would that have made a difference, do you think?
Oh, yeah, that would have saved our marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
without a doubt.
Yeah, and that's I think same for me, right? And I think that's I firmly believe, even though I talk about divorce quite openly, and I do think that there are people that should get divorced. I do think every marriage is salvageable when the two people are equally committed to first and foremost owning their shit. Um, Second is both doing their own internal work to learn skills and tools to be able to come together to connect. We're not taught these things. We're taught whatever our parents modeled for us. And if that wasn't healthy, if what you experience, one of your earliest memories is your dad yelling and storming out of the house, guess what? You're a self-fulfilling prophecy. That is now how you respond, right? You
Hmm.
saw that that's the very short period that you saw your parents together. That's what was modeled for you, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you modeled that as an adult because your child brain is trying to repair and fix the things that you didn't understand as a kid, going, okay, well, this is how they react, but it didn't work for them. And so in some ways, your brain is trying to heal that through the partners that you pick. So how are you feeling?
I'm feeling
It's a lot. I know.
I mean, I feel like I feel good with the knowledge I'm getting. I'm just so bummed that I can't just take it and go back in time and use it.
Right. Because that would be, again, kind of going to the back with the shame. Why didn't
Yeah.
I do that then? Why didn't I know
Yeah.
that then? And part of that is you're not recognizing the lessons that you're having to go through to become the man who can do that. The
That's fair.
version of you then could not have done that. You wouldn't even have been open to hear it because you were so stuck in your trigger.
Yeah.
It took losing her, and maybe who knows what happens in the future. Maybe 5 years from now you get back together, maybe this all goes away, whatever. You're doing the healing work on you, so no matter what happens with her or a future partner, you're becoming the man that can have that type of relationship.
Yeah.
That's where we practice detachment and accepting what is. Right. And it's, I wish I could bottle it up and sell it to people and not have them go through hardships to learn these things. But quite honestly, it's much more effective when you learn it the hard way.
I figure that out. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And so we can come from, like, kind of like what you said and what I preach all the time. You get the lesson you, or the result you want, or the lesson you need. You could not have had the type of deeply connected marriage that is becoming more and more possible for you, regardless of who that's with right now, unless you went through doing it the wrong way and learning what doesn't work. Because the version of you that picked her, that triggered those parts of you, that's what gets brought up in relationships, is the part of you that can get the opportunity to heal. Now, do we wish that we could heal in relationship? Yes. When you are self-aware and you are already working on healing work and you start to pick partners that are safe for you, healing amplifies. Like, it becomes so much more supportive and more connected to heal. But were you doing any healing work up until recently?
I mean, I was in therapy, but I wasn't able to give what I needed to give
Yeah.
at that time.
I mean, therapy has its place for sure. Sometimes therapy is just talking about stuff though, and you're like, I've
Yeah.
talked it to death. I still feel like shit.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and that's where somatic healing comes in. So, soma being the body, where your nervous system and your feelings and your emotions and your stress and all that that's in the body also needs to be worked on. So yeah, you can look at it as like, thank God I'm learning this, because I could have never learned this and continue to have cycles of bad, destructive relationships. And that would have increased and validated the shame cycle that's already going on in your head. And you're putting a stop to that.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
Feels good.
Which means that whether, so this is, and I'll bring, children into the picture now, because I know a lot of people stay together for the kids. Um, and I'm kind of on the firm believer that if you don't want your kids to model your relationship, don't be in that relationship, because they will model far more what they experience than what you tell them. So you could tell them like, oh, like I picked the wrong partner, but your mom and I are stuck together and da, 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 you should choose better. They're going to like, just like you did, you're going to recreate it as an adult. So why expose your kids to that? They would rather see you happy and alone than both of you miserable in a really toxic relationship where you lose yourself, because that will then become what they seek out as adults. And so now your kid is young. Is it a boy
Mhm.
or girl?
Boy.
Boy. He's never going to remember you guys being together. So he's never going to remember the fights. He's not going to remember dad screaming and walking out, right? He was too young for that. What he will remember is how, kind of starting around the age of 3 and 4 is when their long-term memory just a little bit starts to come in, of how mom and dad interacted, how mom and dad prioritized me. Because it can also go the other way if you are too friendly with your ex, right? Where you guys are like vacationing together and you're doing holidays together. It can also be confusing for kids of like, well, why aren't you guys together if you get along so well and da da da. So finding that balance of co-parenting and not being super involved in each other's lives is going to help your child to feel safe in both environments. And that's really the priority for children, especially during a divorce, is them feeling safe in their environments. You can't control what she does. She can bring partners in and out. You can have legal kind of boundaries in place, but more or less, if your child feels safe with you, not just physically, but more so mentally and emotionally, to be able to talk through things without you necessarily needing to fix it unless their well-being is in jeopardy, but them just to express themselves, you have done a world of justice for this kid, right? And you're also doing that work to model for him how it works when your emotions get dysregulated, especially as a man teaching a young boy. Right? So you're going to stop the generational pattern of being volatile and angry. It stops with you. You don't have to model that for him. You can even own, because it's going to be something that you're going to have to work out of your system for a while, but you could start to raise your voice, especially as he gets older and he starts, getting an opinion, and he lives in two different households. They tend to get a little spicy. But you raise your voice and then you go, hold on, I need to take a pause. I am losing control of myself. And then you model going to go regulate yourself. Your child will pick up on that. Right? I have the most emotionally intelligent children, and one of them is very dysregulated, but she watches me as I'll have a moment where I'm like starting to raise my voice and I go, I'm sorry, I need to walk away because I'm getting upset and I need to work on myself. I need to calm myself down so that she can start to emulate that. And that's the gift that you're giving your son.
Yeah, and I'm excited to give it to him because I do not want him to repeat my mistakes when he gets older.
Yeah, none of us do. And he's going to have mistakes. He's going to grow up, in a different environment, in different households, and it's going to be maddening when she does stuff that really irks you, and that's not what you would have done, and also accepting it. Right? She gets to raise her kid how she wants to raise her kid. You get to raise your kid how you want to raise your kid, and sometimes that won't always align. But it's also how can we and when you start to learn this perspective shifting of she's not trying to do anything to specifically piss you off. If she is, then there needs to be a very clear boundary of like, that's not okay. But she doesn't sound like that because she's not feeding into, she's not messaging with you. So she's clearly setting a boundary. But being mindful that the conversations are solely around the kid. And the faster that you can get to that in co-parenting, the less conflict there will be. So the next time you want to reach out to her, owning your part or whatever, being remorseful, I want you to pause and think about, is this actually creating a healthier co-parenting relationship, or am I just regulating her and kind of emotionally dumping on her when she's not open to receiving it? Because that will push her away and keep more boundaries. Because the co-parenting relationship right now is the priority as you guys are adjusting to this new season. Mm-hmm. The divorce may get ugly, it may not. But part of that is making sure that you're not the person who's trying to continue to drag her back into talking about the relationship when she's ready to move into the co-parenting relationship and figure that out. And it's hard, which is why you need your support to be able to process through those things that don't involve her.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I have a friend of mine he was kind of on the other side. His ex-wife kept bringing in emotional conversations. My ex used to bring up emotional conversations, and it would make me dread exchange days or transition days with the kids, because I knew he was going to try and use something, or he was going to try and bring us something from the past. Not here I am trying to heal and move forward with my life, and he kept wanting me to go back into that, which was not a happy emotional place to be in. And it was really hard to distinguish what was productive conversations about the children versus what was almost manipulation to, I don't want to say attack me, but like, again, bring me emotionally into whatever was going on in his world. I was really trying to separate myself from him and not have his emotional state and his emotional chaos affect me as I am trying to figure out single mom life and establishing my own routine and my own stability for the kids while dealing with my own kind of grief of losing a marriage. And so part of that is you kind of got to have those boundaries of with yourself for you, because she doesn't seem to be reaching out to you, of I'm no longer going to bring up anything relationship wise with her. Okay. Now, if you guys are in a place where she is open to talking about it, or she initiates it, or you want to have that conversation, you got to get her permission first, is going to be my suggestion. Okay. Meaning, let's say you've had some really good breakthroughs, or you feel like maybe there's a chance you might get back together because things have settled down some. Then initiate it with that. Hey, I'd really like to talk about our relationship and talk about some things that have come up for me. Are you open to hearing that? And she may not be, but at least then you're not emotionally dumping because it feels better for you, because then you're just using her, and that's not fair to her either.
Okay.
Okay. How you doing?
Honestly, I'm doing good. I'm sitting over here just happy that I'm learning.
Hey, cool. Mission accomplished. And you were all nervous to come on here. But that's it. It really is that simple of just shifting perspectives. Because look, nothing in your 3D world has changed from the beginning of this conversation to now, correct?
Right.
Right. It's just the way that you look at things. And when you change the way you look at things, the things that you look at change. So anytime that emotion starts to ramp up, it's just because of the perspective you're taking. And that doesn't mean that it's bad. It doesn't mean that emotions are wrong and we should avoid them and always be, gaslighting ourselves to feel amazing and wonderful, but you literally can. Um, but our emotions are there to teach us. They're there to inform us. That's why it's such a shame that a lot of men, kind of your age and above, were told that emotions were weakness, that they were invaluable in them. You all are human. Humans have emotions and they're there to guide us. They're actually the most powerful guidance system we have when you learn how to utilize them and what they mean and how to process them. So, kind of the next suggestion I'm going to make for you and anybody else who's resonating with this episode is somatic breath work. That shit will get all of the feels up and out so they aren't repressed. Anger, sadness, grief, whatever it is. The first half of the breathwork session, so it's an hour-long session, is breathing in through the mouth, out through the mouth to certain beats, to certain music, to certain prompts. And it brings up all of that stuff that's repressed and comes out. Now, with men, a lot of men can be disconnected from their body, just based on a little bit that I know about you. I don't think that's you anymore. But it can take a couple of sessions and practice, like a breathwork practice, for them to get connected to their body, to get that repressed stuff out. But then on the second half is when we transition to breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth. And that's when we really get to bring in how we want to feel. We get a lot of clarity now that like all the emotion is out of the way and our logic can kick on. We feel really good. We feel probably maybe even the first time regulated in our nervous system, and we've never felt that way before. You're like, oh, that's what calm feels like. That's how I need to operate. What's getting in the way of that? And it becomes even more helpful on your healing journey, whether you're complementing it with therapy or your own journaling or your own self-awareness work, or coaching in my case. And that combination is really potent to get through and process through things like a divorce and the grief and the shame and everything else that comes so that you can get back connected to you and have a tool that helps you regulate your emotions as opposed to kind of the default, I'm going to use anger and I'm going to explode and create disconnect. So that's my homework for you.
Sounds good.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Anything else you wanted to cover today? Anything else that's still lingering?
No, honestly, you covered basically what's going on right now in my life.
Good. Well, I'm glad this was recorded so that you can go back and listen to it anytime you start to get out of your center grounded self. This sounds like a center grounded Chuck. And this is how we want you interacting and operating most of the time. So when you start to get out of this, okay, I've got some clarity and yeah, I've got some work to do, and you're kind of in this acceptance phase. Anytime you start to get out of that, that's just your warning sign. Oh, little Chucky is ringing his bell. We need to go in and we need to kind of, address him and see what his unmet need is before we start using people to try and meet that need.
Okay. Yeah.
Awesome, Chuck. Well, thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate it. Remind me to send you that nervous system reset toolkit. And if you're listening to this before May 15th, if we're releasing this early, we do have the Healthy Mentality Program open for applications until the 15th. We start the next round on May 18th. And we deep dive all of these tools, all of these strategies, and we go way deeper on survival response, masculinity, relational leadership, fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. I mean, we cover the whole gamut of how to become a grounded man who can make decisions for himself, for his family, is a trusted leader, and create that safe space for the women and relationships in your life. So you can hit me up, or you can go to unblockyourbs.com/healthymen. And if you're listening to it after those doors have closed, you can get on the wait list at the same link. So Chuck, thank you for coming on today. I appreciate you so much. Have a good one.